So we're going over Kaido's backstory in this one because at this point, most of it has been revealed to us, aside from like what he is, like why he's so inherently strong and why he has his horns. And I'll talk about what I think is going on with that, or what I assume is like the popular theory on what Kaido is. But anyway, Kaido was born in the Vodka Kingdom, which according to his viewer card is probably in the Grand Line. And by the age of 10, he was already considered to be like their strongest soldier. And by the age of 13, the Vodka Kingdom basically said that they like couldn't handle him anymore. And considering that they were like a poor-ish country to the point of where like they had to wage war and loot in order to pay tributes to the Celestial Dragons, they decided to offer Kaido to the Navy for enlistment. And also the Navy gave them incentive of like, hey, if you give us Kaido, then you can, you know, go to the Reverie. Kaido didn't like that, of course, and he wound up escaping, and that led to his first bounty being issued, which was like 70 million, which is pretty incredible because I think he was still 13 at this point. But anyway, 2 years later, when he's like 15, I guess, we see Kaido was kind of just doing Kaido stuff on Hachinosu, the pirate island where Blackbeard is currently basing out of. And apparently at this point, he had caught the attention of Rocks, who around this time was, I guess, still the strongest pirate crew around. And Rocks wound up sending Whitebeard, who was on his crew at the time, to go recruit Kaido. And Whitebeard was like, hey brat, you want to be a pirate? Rocks wants you to join, what will you do? And Kaido was like, well, I guess I'll join. And I guess that really cemented Rocks' crew being like the strongest crew around for like the next 6 years or so, because eventually we see, I think this is Big Mom, alerting Kaido that they're going to God Valley. And that's why I say that he was on their crew for about 6 years possibly, because Sengoku says that the God Valley incident happened 38 years ago. And in chapter 1049, it's kind of telling us that he was recruited 44 years ago. But anyway, at the God Valley incident, the Rocks pirates, who, like I said, were considered the strongest crew in the world, were wiped out at this point. And they were taken down by Garp, who joined forces with Roger in order to protect the Celestial Dragons and their slaves. It was also on this day that Kaido received his devil fruit, because in chapter 999, Big Mom says, on the day at God Valley when the Rocks pirates fell, I was the one who gave you your mythical type fish fruit. You owe me a lifelong debt, Kaido. So after this point, I guess Kaido was kind of like on his grind or trying to find himself and maybe form a crew or whatever. But he also wound up getting captured by the Marines around this time, but also he was captured many times before. I think it said he was captured like 18 times or something, but it's also revealed in chapter 1049 that a lot of the times he was captured was simply because he was hungry and he wanted to eat their food. But one of these particular times that he was captured after the Rocks pirates had fell, he wound up being sent to Vegapunk's third research institute on Punk Hazard. And there he was like getting experimented on and stuff. And Vegapunk wound up extracting his lineage factor from his devil fruit. And that's how he was able to replicate it, which eventually created the devil fruit that we see Momonosuke eat, where he becomes, you know, the pink dragon thing that he is now. But I also think they might have sent Kaido to Punk Hazard for another reason, and that's because like what he could be. And I think he's likely half ancient giant or something like that. And I say that because, you know, he's inherently super strong. He's pretty big, not too big, especially considering, you know, how big people get in the One Piece world, aside from just being giants. But he also has like the horns. Now, how does that work? Like, how would an ancient giant get together with a human? I don't know. How do any of the other relationships in the One Piece world work? I'm not going to question it. Oda just, you know, finds a way to make it work. Now, it's a possibility that he's not half ancient giant, but it just seems likely at this point. But anyway, Kaido winds up escaping from this facility, and as he's leaving, he finds King, who is a Lunarian named Albert. And he's like, hey, you know, since you're a Lunarian, they're never going to let you go. They're always going to be experimenting on you. So why don't you just leave this place and, you know, come join my pirate crew and be my right-hand man? And King was like, all right, deal. So I guess after this point, Kaido started forming like his full Beast Pirates crew and became pretty well known because Kurozumi Higurashi eventually finds him somehow. And she says, it's been 10 years since the Rocks pirates fell at God Valley, and you're now known as the embodiment of brutality. And then she essentially proposes to Kaido that like, hey, come to Wano because you can get into the weapon production business there. And that's like a good deal. And then Kaido, of course, agrees to that. And I guess this kind of lines up with around the same time that Higurashi gave Orochi his plan to do kind of like the same thing. Basically overthrow the shogunate with her help of the Mane Mane no Mi, impersonating Sukiyaki and whatnot. But then also telling him to get money so that he could start producing weapons and using the workers of Wano to create them. So in the end, this was like always Higarashi's plan, getting Kaido to come to Wano and work together with Orochi to turn it into the dystopia that it is currently. Also around this time, I guess Yamato is born, since this is around 28 years ago and that's how old she is. It's still not revealed who her mother is, and it's possible it may never be revealed, but hey, maybe she's important, maybe she's not. But a couple years pass, I think about 3, and Kaido and Orochi, really get things going in Wano, getting the weapons factories going, overthrowing the country and whatnot. And it's at this point that Oden returns from his final voyage with Roger. And once Oden comes back, he sees what had happened and finds out what Orochi had done and all that stuff. And he goes after Orochi and is going to try to kill him and everything, but he's eventually convinced by Kaido and Orochi that like, hey, we don't need to fight because, the citizens of Wano might turn into collateral damage. So to avoid that, why don't you just dance naked in the streets for like, once a week, and then after 5 years we'll leave. And then that led to that whole thing. So 2 years after this, I think Moria winds up coming to Wano, and then that's when he has his big fight with Kaido, which he loses of course, and leads to him being a recluse in Thriller Bark and all that stuff. But it's 3 years after this where we have the big epic battle between Oden, the Scabbards, and the Beast Pirates, trying to overthrow Kaido and Orochi once and for all. And we saw that Oden did have Kaido on the ropes and was probably going to win, or at least it's implied that he was. But good old Higurashi used her fruit powers to become Momonosuke and distracted Oden at the last second, leading to Kaido bonking him on the head and winning the battle essentially. And this eventually led to Oden's execution, which led to Oden making a deal with Kaido saying like, hey, whoever survives for an hour, let them go. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what happened. And we got the whole Oden being boiled for an hour, holding up the Scabbards, and Kaido of course went back on his word, but the Scabbards wound up escaping anyway, which unfortunately led to Oden's death. After this, Kaido set Oden's castle on fire and eventually had Momonosuke dead to rights, but instead of killing him, he just left him in the burning castle, and we saw that eventually led to Toki sending him and a select few other Scabbards to the future with her fruit ability. So around 10 years after this point, Kozuki supporters decided to launch like a rebellion against Kaido, and Kaido just, destroyed all of them, of course. And then I guess around 6 or so years after this, it's assumed that Kaido began working with Doflamingo and Caesar, where they started their whole Smile production ring that was going on successfully until, Luffy kind of shut it down. But that leads us to the current point in the series where, Kaido is an emperor and has all of his stuff going on until, Luffy comes to Wano and kind of throws a wrench in all that stuff. But yeah, that's Kaido's backstory. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you liked the video, guys, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.